Imagine stumbling upon a campsite deep in the mountains where 9 young explorers once rested. The snow is quiet, the air is bitterly cold, and the tent stands half buried, shredded from the inside out. No footprints leading in, no footprints leading out, just silence and the haunting realization that every single person who once slept here has disappeared or died. What could drive trained mountaineers to rip open their own tent in the middle of the night, fleeing into the darkness, half-dressed and barefoot, in sub-zero temperatures? And what force, human, natural, or something else entirely, was powerful enough to ensure that none of them would ever make it back alive? The story begins in the winter of 1962, in a remote corner of the Ural Mountains, deep within Soviet Russia. A group of 10 hikers, all university students and seasoned trekkers, set out on what should have been a challenging but achievable journey. Their goal was to reach a mountain pass known by locals as Otorten, a desolate peak whose name in the language of the indigenous Mansi people translated chillingly to Don to go there. It should have been a straightforward expedition. These were not amateurs. They were young but highly skilled, engineers, athletes, and mountaineering enthusiasts who had tackled harsh winters before. The leader, Viktor Alexeyev, was a disciplined and respected figure among his peers. His diary entries spoke of confidence, even excitement, as the group made their way through thick forests and icy slopes. Their laughter echoed in the valleys. They sang folk songs by the campfire, photographed themselves with makeshift sleds, and scribbled jokes in their journals. It was supposed to be the adventure of their youth, but only weeks later, that joy would be replaced with horror. Search teams sent to find them would uncover a trail of evidence so strange, so deeply unsettling, that decades later, investigators are still divided on what truly happened. Here's what we know. On February 20th, 1962, the hikers were officially declared overdue. Families had stopped receiving letters, and the university grew concerned. Soon, a search party was dispatched, made up of volunteers, fellow students, and later, military personnel. They combed through snowfields and frozen ridges, following faint traces of ski tracks that led them toward the wilderness. On February 25th, the rescuers found the first sign, a large canvas tent, collapsed and half buried in snow, perched on the slope of a mountain. At first, it looked ordinary, until they saw the cuts. The fabric had been shredded from the inside, as if those within had slashed their way out in a desperate panic. Inside, the hikers' belongings remained, boots neatly lined, coats folded, food supplies untouched, and even cameras waiting with film still inside. It was as if they had left in an instant, abandoning everything they needed to survive. But why? Investigators followed a trail of faint footprints leading away from the tent. They were barefoot impressions, some in socks, others completely bare, marching into the snow. These tracks stretched for nearly half a mile before vanishing into the whiteness. The first bodies were found at the edge of a forest. 2 young men lay beneath a cedar tree, stripped to their underwear, their hands burned as if they had tried to climb frantically into the branches. A small campfire sat nearby, long extinguished. Their feet were bare, their skin was covered in bruises and scratches, as though they had fought against something or someone. Soon after, 3 more bodies were discovered in shallow snow between the tree line and the tent. These were the leader, Victor, and 2 others. Their poses were strange, as if they had been crawling or stumbling toward the tent, desperately trying to return. And then came the most disturbing find. Months later, when the snow melted further, rescuers uncovered the final 4 hikers, deep within a ravine, partially buried. Unlike the others, their injuries were not consistent with hypothermia. Their ribs were shattered. One had a fractured skull so severe it resembled the impact of a car crash. Another was missing her tongue. And yet, here's the part nobody expected, there were no external wounds, no cuts, no blood. It was as if something had crushed them from the inside out. What kind of force could do that? The official Soviet report was vague. The cause of death was listed as an unknown compelling force, and with that, the case was quietly closed. But speculation had only begun. Some argued it was an avalanche. The hikers may have panicked, slashed their tent, and fled into the snow only to freeze. But experts quickly dismantled this. The slope where they camped was too shallow. No signs of an avalanche were found. Their tent, though collapsed, remained half-standing. So why would experienced mountaineers suddenly fear for their lives? Others whispered of military experiments. In the 1960s, the Soviet Union was known for secret weapons testing in remote areas. Some suggested parachute mines or sonic weapons might have caused chaos, injuries, and disorientation, driving the hikers into madness. Could they have been victims of a classified operation, silenced forever by the very government sent to investigate them? But perhaps the strangest theory comes from the indigenous Mansi people. To them, the mountain was cursed. They spoke of strange lights in the sky, glowing orbs that danced over the peaks at night. And indeed, on the very nights the hikers perished, witnesses in nearby villages reported luminous objects drifting above the mountains. Was this a coincidence or something more sinister? The journals of the hikers had even more mystery. Their final entries described strange feelings of dread. One note, hastily scribbled, spoke of snowmen watching them. Another photograph recovered from a camera appeared to show glowing lights in the distance. Skeptics dismiss these as jokes or damaged film, but those who have seen the images insist they look eerily real. And here's where things get even stranger. The hikers' clothing, when tested years later, contained unusually high levels of radiation. Why would ordinary camping gear carry traces of radioactive material? Had they wandered into something they shouldn't have, or had they encountered something far beyond human understanding? And then there is the question of sound. Modern researchers have suggested that powerful wind patterns known as infrasound might have been at play. Infrasound is a low-frequency vibration, inaudible to the human ear, but capable of inducing panic, nausea, and even hallucinations. Could the mountain's shape have created an acoustic trap, driving the hikers into madness, causing them to slash their way out of the tent and run into the cold, never realizing they were fleeing from nothing more than sound? It's a theory, but it doesn't explain the crushed ribs, the missing tongue, or the strange lights in the sky. What investigators found next made the mystery even darker. Several of the hikers were wearing clothes stolen from the bodies of others. Scarves, socks, and jackets had been switched around. This suggested that some had died earlier, and the survivors had scavenged what they could to stay alive. A natural survival instinct. Yet this also hinted at something far more grim, that the group may have fractured, torn apart by fear, and perhaps even violence against each other. But if that were the case, why would they abandon their weapons, their knives, their gear, and instead stumble barefoot through the snow? And who, or what, inflicted injuries so catastrophic they were compared to high-speed collisions? The Soviet authorities never released all the files. Witnesses who searched the site later claimed that pages were missing. Photographs were destroyed, and certain evidence was locked away. Was it a cover-up? Or did the officials simply not want the world to know what happened on that mountain? 60 years later, the questions remain. Some claim it was aliens. Others say it was secret nuclear testing. Some cling to the belief that it was simply nature, an avalanche, infrasound, hypothermia, and panic all conspiring in one terrible night. But none of these explanations fully match the evidence. Every theory leaves gaps, contradictions, and questions unanswered. And so the image remains, frozen in time, a slashed tent on a snowy slope, empty boots still waiting inside, and 9 lives cut short by something so terrifying, so inexplicable, that we may never understand it. The mountain where this tragedy occurred now bears their name. Locals call it Dyatlov Pass, in memory of the leader who never returned. Hikers still venture there, some out of respect, others chasing answers, and a few seeking the same thrill that once drew 9 young students to their fate. But many who step onto that snow cannot shake the feeling that they are being watched, that the mountain remembers, that perhaps the story is not finished. So the question lingers: what truly happened on that freezing night? Was it nature, madness, or something far beyond human comprehension? And if the mountain could speak, what terrible truth would it reveal?